Yo, starting the conquest of the Tears.
All the world has fallen to Kairos, and now the Overlord's eye is on the Tears, our home. The last corner of the world free of Kairos' reign. Two armies, the Disfavored and the Scarlet Chorus, march south from the Northern Empire, the last realm to fall to Kairos a century prior. In the early days of 428, Kairos' armies arrive at the Gates of Judgment, the mountainous border that we Tearsmen so long believed unassailable. Unable to agree on a unified plan of defense, the various leaders of the Tears sit and wait for each other to deal with the conquerors, until it's too late.
During the conquest, you will decide your character's actions during Kairos' invasion of the Tears, shaping the world through which you will adventure over the course of the game. Each choice you make affects your character and how major factions of the Tears respond to you. Your decisions matter. Choose wisely. 428 TR, Year 1 of Kairos' conquest. The Bastard City. The Bastard City stood on the northern border between Kairos' empire and the Tears, built upon a natural harbor at the crossroads between realms. The city was a nexus of commerce. To the Tears, it was the center of all wealth. To a northerner, it was little more than a backwater trading post. Its symbolic status as a gateway to the continent made it a natural first target in Kairos' military conquest. Circumstances were ideal for you to prove your worth as a soldier in Kairos' army. Taking the city would send a message to the rest of the Tears. Kairos' will is insurmountable. The Bastard City, named for its position between two realms, the Northern Empire and the Southern Tears, the Bastard City and its surrounding lands, known as the Bastard Tier, is a melting pot of cultures and a place of commerce and intrigue. The Tearsmen of the South view the Bastard City as a place of wealth and excess, but to the people of the Northern Empire, the Bastard City is little more than a sprawling slum. Tunon the Adjudicator established his court in the Bastard City. From this foothold in the Tears, he and his court of Fatebinders imposed Kairos' law upon the conquered land. Kairos. Kairos is a name out of legend. For centuries, the Overlord has consolidated power, sending vast armies to swallow entire realms. The most powerful mystic the world has ever seen, Kairos can issue edicts, magical proclamations that level cities, spread pox, sunder lands, or change the course of seasons. The Archons, the masters of magics throughout the known world, bow to Kairos, and the Overlord readily destroys any Archons unwilling to kneel. These sorceresses and madmen lead the Overlord's armies in near-endless conquest. As the realms of the known world fall to the Overlord, these captured territories are divvied up among the Archons to manage. Able to deliver suffering and woe to every corner of Tyranny without leaving the capital, few have seen the Overlord in person. Though Kairos' name is the single most recognized name in the world, only Archons can say what the Overlord looks like. Select a token on the map to begin. We can go to the Infiltrate the Tears. Both armies sent their forces to prepare the way. Or Gates of Judgment. In the first major engagement of the war, Kairos' armies cross the mountains and establish a foothold. Let's go with Infiltrate the Tears. I don't know if I had to choose between these two or if I'm going to do both. Infiltrate the Tears. History would remember the Gates of Judgment as the first battle of the conquest, but the real combat unfolded with the advanced units on both armies preparing for the upcoming war. The Disfavored and the Scarlet Chorus each had a plan to infiltrate the capital city. Which army did you join? Disfavored. Disfavored. Disciplined and battle-hardened, the Disfavored are an elite legion in Kairos' army. They spearheaded the conquest of the younger realms, finding themselves always outnumbered but never outclassed. Led by the steadfast and dutiful Graven Ash, whom they followed with obsessive devotion, they are committed to imposing their interpretation of order upon the relative lawlessness of the Tears. The Legion only tolerates Northerners in their ranks, priding themselves on their high standards and cultural purity. Or Scarlet Chorus. The Scarlet Chorus is little more than a gang of thugs and their captive slaves. Rather than organized under commissioned officers, the Chorus allows a hierarchy, seemingly ruled by whoever has the bravado to command and defend their position. At the head of this chaotic pecking order, the Archon of Secrets, better known as the Voice of Nerat, treats the Scarlet Chorus as his personal army. The Scarlet Chorus often suffers tremendous losses after battle, only to swell in the aftermath when captured enemies and collateral prisoners are given the cruel opportunity to join or die. The script. Huh? No, in this situation we aid the disfavored scouts. You lent your skills to the elite disfavored scouts to capture a border garrison. Graven Ash insisted that an early victory in the offensive would boost the morale of his troops and diminish the haughty overconfidence of the Southerners. The Oathbound scouts identified a modest border defense and collaborated on an organized attack that would leave the enemy uncoordinated and cut off from aid. You oversaw the preparations and offered your opinions on the strategy. When the clashing of swords and spears fell to silence, followed by the cheering of disfavored scouts, you were the least surprised. Oh, that did deal with everything. Okay. We have to choose between Inside Agent, you found an ally within the city to prepare the way for the approaching armies, or Containing the Fire, the Bastard City's resident fire mages threatening the first leg of the Conquest. Kairos' forces put a stop to their unchecked power. Let's Contain the Fire. Your fiercest opponents in the Bastard City were the mages of the School of Wild Wrath. Too barbaric to use their power responsibly, their unbridled practitioners needed to be stopped. How did you trick the hot-tempered mages into their own undoing? I had a meeting with the Voices of Nerat. You tricked the guild elders into meeting with the Voices of Nerat, Archons of Secrets. Archon of Secrets. The Archon was notorious for his cruel and mysterious interrogation techniques. The mages were never seen again. The Voices of Nerat. Known in his official capacity as the Archon of Secrets, the Voices of Nerat is equal parts genius and madman. Rumors abound that he can steal the minds of others, though few, if any, are alive to confirm as much. The subjects of interrogation are never heard from again, and the Archon is able to recall the memories of his victims with startling accuracy. He is the inconsistent leader of the Scarlet Chorus, vacillating between commanding from the vanguard and directing his armies in absentia. Despite his strange methods, no one doubts that the Voices of Nerat is an accomplished strategist, even suggesting that his madness stems from thinking hundreds, perhaps thousands of steps ahead of his enemies. There were few who could describe what horrors the Archon of Secrets visited upon his enemies during the Conquest. Whether the Elder Mages knew little of the Archon's reputation or met with him out of curiosity didn't matter. Once the flap of the Archon's tent closed, none of them were heard from again, save for a strangled cry of alarm that ended just as swiftly. Leaderless, the School of Wild Wrath fell into disorder, and the remaining members were slain by the disfavored or conscripted into the Scarlet Chorus. Trail of the Bastard City. Your tactics of infiltration placed you in the Bastard City, ahead of the main armies. Your work softened the city defenses for the arrival of Kairos' forces, but you wanted a decisive gesture that would give your allies a meaningful advantage. How did you assist in the fall of the Bastard City? I dueled the city marshal, incited a riot, or I spread fear through assassination. Sure, I did that one. Ooh, I get an ability of some sort? Okay, neat. Where is Respite? Yeah. Okay, I spread fear through assassination. Keeping to the shadows, you eliminated the leaders of the Bastard City one by one. Again, Concealing Shadows. Once per encounter, effects self plus 100% grazed deflection for 12 seconds, minus 100 accuracy for 12 seconds, plus 200 dodge for 12 seconds, and plus 200 parry for 12 seconds. Create a cloud of obscuring shadows and dust for short duration. Enemies that use physical attacks against you have significantly increased chance to miss. During this time, your attacks will also be less effective. Some deaths were quiet and unnoticed, while others were gruesome beyond words. As a wave of murder overtook the city's elites, your deeds swelled in infamy. Well before the armies arrived, no one in the bastard city felt safe in their homes, much less behind their walls. By the time Kairos' forces crested the horizon, the city was fearful enough to throw open the gates and welcome their new protectors. Okay. Yes. The bastard city settled into a state of normalcy, with every tower displaying Kairos' banner. Your name was whispered alongside rumors of a decorated career to come. The armies divided into two fronts and migrated south. Tunon sent word that you were to join the next frontier of Kairos' conquest, either as judge and overseer of the settlement of Lithian's Crossing, or as a war advisor with the armies advancing into the realm of Apex. I can go to Apex, or I can go to Lithian's Crossing. So Apex. The troops of the mountain realm of Apex stood idle in the safety of their valley, biding their time as their neighbors in the bastard tier fell. In the second year of war, a joint force of the disfavored and Scarlet Chorus crossed over the mountains to take control of the tier's central valley, or Lithian's Crossing. Deposits of iron made the settlements of Lithian's Crossing a strategic war asset. Kairos sent the forge-bound, smith mages of exceptional skill, to establish a flow of weaponry. Tunon, the Adjudicator, sent one of his fate-binders to ensure the enforcement of Kairos' law. Okay. Join the next frontier either as judge and overseer of Lithian's Crossing or as war advisor. I think I'm gonna be a judge and overseer. .429 TR, Year 2 of Kairos' Conquest. Lithian's Crossing. Years ago, Lithian the Bold founded a small merchant town at the intersection of ancient old walls. A pact between settlers and a mercenary company meant that caravans were able to travel without fear of bandits or bane, and the town thrived in modest insignificance. Lithian's Crossing drew Kairos' attention for the iron deposits in the surrounding hills. The region under Kairos' control, the northern smith mages could set up workshops to refine ore and arm the disfavored with the finest weapons in the known world. The Archon of Secrets dismantled the mercenary support with a generous bribe, taking the crossing in a bloodless victory. Tunon dispatched you to travel alongside Kairos' forces and bring order to the region. Oh, click something, don't I? The iron must flow. You found a clever solution to improve the production of iron weapons and armor, maybe. The cult of Tyranny. The Archon of Song's power ensnared the mind of a disfavored soldier. Sure. Siren, Archon of Song, used her arcane charm to lure locals into joining Kairos' army. As a patroness of the Scarlet Chorus, her efforts were critical to the conscription of new recruits. When an enthralled disfavored soldier joined her cult, his company feared that the Archon was growing out of control and needed to be stopped. I can destroy her cult, or I can send it to the Vanguard. I'll destroy it. The disfavored demanded that the Archon of Song cease her recruitment practices and that they be allowed to violently subdue her cult of the followers. The loss of soldiers was a significant setback to the Scarlet Chorus's conscription efforts. In response to your ruling, the Archon of Song departed your company in bitter silence, but not before releasing her arcane hold over the latest batch of recruits. The disfavored remained obstinate that the dispersal of her cult continues as planned, hunting down the confused or memory-stricken innocents. They put to death those who they couldn't beat into obedience. The Scarlet Chorus barely restrained themselves from the indignity, which proved a major setback to their army's strength and numbers. This isn't going quite how I thought it would. Seems like I'm not really favoring one faction over the other so far. So, ancient threats. Who protect the city from the attacks of arcane predators? Or a red anvil. A forge-bound mage swore allegiance to the Scarlet Chorus, creating strife between the armies. Let's do the ancient threats. Ancient threats. Drawn to the arcane energy around the forges, mystical predators from the nearby old walls began to raid Lithian's Crossing at all hours. Both of Kairos' armies reserved their strengths for the front lines of the war, and yet the city required protection. You had to delegate responsibility somewhere. Since the disfavored used most of the iron that came out of Lithian's Crossing, it fell to them to stand as the city's vigilant protectors. The Scarlet Chorus enjoyed a necessary reprieve. Though the disfavored were averse to ruling, they couldn't argue with the reasoning behind it. They rallied in the streets of Lithian's Crossing, patrolling on alert in shifts that lasted day and night in an impressive show of force. They managed to repel several attacks from the predators in districts that would have otherwise suffered great harm. Able to do some good, the disfavored still detested you for keeping them from the battle with their real enemy in the tiers. Who controlled the crossing? Tragedy struck when a mercenary hired by the voices of Narat injured a forge-bound artisan, leaving him unable to practice his craft. Tunon ordered the mercenaries to leave the city in the hands of Kairos' more responsible servants. Only a token garrison could be left behind while the armies returned to the front. As the disfavored and Scarlet Chorus showed increasing tension and hostility toward each other, Tunon agreed at best that only one force controlled the crossing. Forge-bound magesmiths sworn to Kairos' service. Though their operations in the tiers are overseen by Tunon and his court of fatebinders, each forge-bound uses magic as a tool to augment their personal craft. Most commonly smelting and metalworking, but carpenters, tailors, and tanners are found in their ranks, and each mage strives to create that which is impossible with mundane hands. Most notably, the forge-bound are the sole masters of iron working in the known world. Using spells of fire resistance to wade into the forge fires, the forge-bound can work iron at temperatures no other forge can match, and with a hands-on touch that no mundane smith could hope to achieve. Because of this vital skill, the forge-bound are considered a strategic war asset, their lives regimented and controlled so that the forges may churn out iron arms and armor without debate, delay, or distraction. I give it to the Scarlet Chorus. The Scarlet Chorus flooded Lithian's Crossing with overeager and undisciplined recruits. In the first few days of occupation, settlers suffered under rampant theft, murder, rape, and arson. By the following week, the horsemen who sowed chaos for personal gain were dead, strung up by the more disciplined half that took up the reins as the self-appointed bosses of Lithian's Crossing. The forge-bound continued to mint iron weapons and armor, which Kairos' merchants carted to his favorite garrisons elsewhere in the tiers. Shipments were light, or sometimes absent. The Scarlet Chorus quartermaster claimed ignorance of the matter. Okay. I have to choose another step. The mercenaries expelled in Lithian's Crossing under new leadership, Kairos' forces congratulated themselves on bringing order to the settlement and guaranteeing a productive flow of resources. Over the course of this diversion, the army front advanced further into the tiers. Your skills were needed in the realm of Azure, Stalwart, or the Vellum Citadel. Vellum Citadel was a library fortress, the largest archive of the written word in the tiers. The School of Ink and Quill protected and maintained the archive of ancient lore for centuries, standing apart from the political upheavals of the Younger Realms as an enduring pillar of knowledge and culture. Stalwart, with its easy to defend position and rich military tradition, the realm of Stalwart was the most formidable realm in the tiers. For Azure, Kairos dispatched the Archon of Stone to subjugate the nation of Azure. I'm gonna go to Vellum Citadel. It sounds the most interesting of them, because there's not information on most of them. .430 TR, Year 3 of Kairos' Conquest. The Vellum Citadel was an archive and library of massive scale. Its inhabitants were known as the School of Ink and Quill, a circle of mages that centuries ago carved out their own mountainous refuge on lands unsettled by the other major realms. Legends said that the Citadel housed a treasure trove of arcane knowledge. The Overlord's spies infiltrated the school and confirmed as much. The time was ripe to send a detachment to the great library fortress and force the scholars to yield to Kairos. Chain of Command, a peaceful surrender turned bloody. Or Song of Ensnarement. Siren's song ensnared some stealthy sages. Sure. Song of Ensnarement. Siren's Archon of Song used her power to enthrall enemy mages who crept beyond the Citadel walls. After Kairos' forces rounded up the arcane practitioners, the disfavored began executing the new captives before they could share dangerous knowledge, a crime under Kairos' law with the Scarlet Course. I can calm the disfavored with a compromise. Or I can punish the disfavored by executing mages. Punish the disfavored for executing mages bound to the Scarlet Chorus. Okay, I'm gonna do that. You punish the disfavored for executing mages bound to the Scarlet Chorus, ordering that several disfavored soldiers be given to the Archon of Song as their personal bodyguards. The wisdom of the sages and knowledge of the Vellum Citadel were too important to silence. The disfavored balked at entering the Archon service, but your ruling left them with no recourse. Archon Siren, delighted in having new toys to play with. What? Archon Siren, delighted in having new toys to play with, and promptly enthralled her personal guard. You spotted them in camp days later, following their new mistress with wide-eyed devotion. That composes songs of strength and provokes bloody slaughter. Or suspicions arose when sages surrendered. Sure. The Spy Master's agents. A group of enemy mages surrendered to the disfavored, claiming to be spies loyal to the voices of Narad. No one in the army could verify the claim. The disfavored readied to interrogate the mages, but the Scarlet Chorus protested, demanding that the prisoners be given to their custody. They couldn't risk the voices of Narad's secrets falling into the wrong hands. The lament angering the Scarlet Chorus, the mages were disfavored property. They remained in custody while you reviewed their claims. Where I ignored the disfavored threats, sharply reminding them that they marched at Kairos' orders and not their own whims. Mages were released to the custody of the Scarlet Chorus. Nope. Though it meant anchoring the Scarlet Chorus, the mages were disfavored property. They remained in custody while you reviewed their claims. You took time poring over the mages' confiscated documents, finding no blatant messages to the voices of Marat or anyone else. You resolved to question the mages yourself. When you reached their cells, you discovered the bodies, each of them slaughtered in a grisly display. Tense discussion and accusations followed, but no evidence to suggest a responsible party. You were forced to let the matter drop. The Edict of Fire. Food and morale dwindled as the siege party realized the enemy would win this war of attrition. Junon sent word that Kairos' patience had run thin. The Overlord would cast an Edict of Fire on the enemy. The parchment arrived in a slender case of engraved iron written on it, the words of a spell powerful enough to destroy the Vellum Citadel. You had the choice of when to read the edict. Reading it at sunrise would offer your enemies no warning of the devastation to come. You could also wait until sunset, giving them ample time to flee or make amends. Sunrise. Opting to give the enemy no quarter, you proclaimed the Edict of Fire at the first moments of dawn, granting the enemy no warning of the destruction to come. Though the chorus insisted your actions doomed their spies, the disfavored applauded your decision. You read the edict as a new sun rose behind the citadel, casting a long shadow in its wake. You were the last person to see the Hall of the Knowledge the moment before the devastation. The earth shook and red-orange lights glowed in the foundation of the sprawling citadel. Bubbling up from under the library, a torrent of lava heaved with explosive force, gushing from the windows between loose bricks, melting hostile trenches in the surrounding land. The mages awoke to smoke and fire. For most, it is already too late. Only a handful of bewildered mages escaped the smoldering collapse of the massive library fortress. Kairos' will be done. The armies of Kairos left the devastation of the Vellum Citadel in silence. From that day forward, the Tears came to know that the once noble citadel as the Burning Library. Previously known as the Vellum Citadel, the archive and ancestral home of the sages is now the site of a volcanic crater. Eruptions of lava began during the conquest of the Tears after Kairos' forces failed to claim the library in the Overlord's name. Kairos cast an edict of fire to break the siege and rid the world of the forbidden knowledge stored there. The citadel has been smoldering ruin ever since. This was an undisputed loss of resources, knowledge, culture, and life. But a message had been sent. The Overlord will not tolerate defiance. You didn't have long to rest before Tunon called you into service once more. You were one of the last to depart from the mountains, and as you journeyed off, you spotted a few campfires in the mountains. They were mere specks dwarfed by the inferno, the last gasps of survivors or perhaps looters from Kairos' armies, bored and dared enough to peek through the ashes. Bored and daring enough to peek through the ashes. Conquest complete. You have reached the end of Kairos' conquest. Do you want to continue or erase your progress and start over? Let us continue.
The year is 431, and Kairos' invasion has shattered all major opposition in the tiers. The Younger Realms, the Bastard Tier, the Free Cities. All who defied Kairos lay broken by battle, or bowed in surrender. The two armies of the Overlord, the Disfavored and the Scarlet Chorus, now control our lands. But our will is not yet extinguished. Not entirely. In the Valley of Vendrian's Well, those of us unwilling to bow to Kairos have banded together in defiance. Violating an oath of surrender from 2 years prior, we have staged a bloody uprising, murdering the Disfavored and Scarlet Chorus garrison in a midnight assault. With their main forces spread across the tiers, the Disfavored and Scarlet Chorus redeploy to Vendrian's Well to crush the resistance. But months pass with no definitive battle. As disagreement and discord paralyze the Archons, we bide our time and wait for our message of insurrection to spread across the tiers. The Overlord is not amused, and Kairos has one message for the Archons: crush the Oathbreakers or die. Kairos backs this threat with an edict, a magical commandment that can slay all in the valley should the order be ignored. The honor of proclaiming this edict fell to you. Sent across the mountains to Vendrian's Well, you carry the Overlord's edict to read before the Archons. As you finally make your way through the winding mountain passes into the valley, the ground trembles, and Kairos' magic seals the way behind you. You are trapped in Vendrian's Well, with Kairos' armies and the Oathbreakers. The only way to survive is to fulfill the terms of the Overlord's edict, in any way that you can.